All right, guys, here's a short video that should help with a little bit of lesson four. Lesson four was all about using what we learned about solving quadratics to be able to solve for area problems of rectangles. So here's an example of an area problem that we had in class, and I'm going to go work through it. So after much discussion, Carlos and Clarita agreed to design a curved house logo to fit in a rectangle that's 6 inches longer than it is wide. So we talked about in class that if something was 6 inches longer than it is wide, you can say that one of the dimensions were x and the other one would be x plus 6 because it's 6 inches longer. And then we do know in this problem we're given, if I look back, the actual curbside logo, it gave us a specific area that it had to be. So we'll say in this problem, which wasn't the actual, wasn't the actual area in other ones, but we'll say that the area was going to be, say it was going to be 160 square feet. This is a really big logo, but we'll pretend it's in a gym or on a football field or something like that. So not knowing, you might be able to figure out what two numbers multiply together to get 160, where one of them is 6 more than the other. But there's a lot of problems you would not be able to know off the top of your head. So we can set up an equation. Since we know that area is length times width, you can say length is x, where width is x, and length is x plus 6. So when you multiply them together, we know that length times width should equal the area of 160. So here, we can, in order to solve for x, we're going to distribute the x so that we get a full expression of 6x equals 160. Then we're going to subtract 160 on both sides. And now you have an equation that equals 0. We can use the quadratic formula, or in this case, I should be able to factor this. Because there's a 1x squared, I can factor it into the two things that multiply to negative 160, but add to 6. And that would be, let's see, we have 10 and 6 doesn't work. Let's see, 8 and 20, no. So, well, now, you know what? I can't think of this off the top of my head. So instead of factoring it, let's try the quadratic formula. Negative b, so negative 6. 6 squared is 36, minus 4 times a times c, which is negative 160, all over 2 times a. So negative 4 times 1 times negative 160 is, so again, negative 4 times negative 160 is a positive 640. So it's going to be 36 plus 640 because this becomes a positive 640. So 640 plus 36 is going to be 676. And let's see if you could take the square root of 676. Yep, it becomes exactly 26. So you get negative 6 plus or minus 26 divided by 2. So your two answers are negative 6 plus 26, so that would be 20. Divided by 2, you get a positive 10. Or you get a negative 6 minus 26 is negative 32. Negative 32 divided by 2 is negative 16. Well, in this case, because one of our dimensions is actually x, it couldn't be a negative because you can't have a negative length. So the negative 16 doesn't really work, so our only answer for x is 10. So 10 and 10 plus 6. So you get the two dimensions are a 10 by a 16 rectangle. And that's how you do problems that give you a rectangle and give you the area. So some people had trouble on the homework. So this was an example of some of the problems you had for homework, and I just wanted to show you the difference. When it says solve the equations below, you could have used many different methods to solve them. That's not where a lot of students had problem. What they did was it said describe the rectangle, the rectangle the equation fits in, and the constraints that have been placed on the dimensions of the rectangle. So let's look at this one. If you look at the last problem, by moving the 170 over, when it equaled 170, that kind of let us know what the area was. because if you look at the last one, we knew that the length times width equaled the C. So if we can go ahead and take the GCF of this side, which is x, I can find out that you have the two factors are x and x plus 7, which equals 170. Now you can see that your two dimensions are x and x plus 7. So that would tell you that your rectangle that you're going to be using is where the length is going to be 7 more than the width, and you get an answer of 170. And if you solve the quadratic, I'm going to solve it by factoring. Two things that multiply to negative 170 that add to 7 would be, actually, would be 17 and 10. You could have a negative 10 and a positive 17. So this factors into x minus 10 times x plus 17, which equals 0. And if you set each of these equal to 0, you get an answer of negative 10 and a positive 10, and you get another answer of negative 17. So the two things that work here, negative doesn't work because you have x as the length. So 10 is the only answer. So you get an answer of 10 and 10 plus 7, which is 17. So you have a 10 by 17 rectangle.